Okay, Year 10, this week's work for English language is for you to do a past paper summary task. So for this lesson, I'm going to be walking you through the steps using a different past paper, but walking you through each step so that hopefully you'll feel a little more confident moving into writing your own. All right. Of course, the first step in any task on the reading paper, remember this is a reading paper task, is to read the text. And it's always my advice for you to read the text for comprehension first before you go at it with highlighters or with a set question in mind. I'm going to encourage you to pause the video right now and read, pause it so you can, with this text on the screen, and read this text on your own, okay? Once you've read it through, then go ahead and push play again on the video. Okay, after you read a text for comprehension, then you want to look at the set question. For this question, this is right off the past paper. The instructions for the question are: write a summary of what passage B tells you about the structure of Uluru and about dream time. When you read a set question, you want to identify and use a highlighter to identify the key words in any question that you're given, and in the summary. The same thing applies. You want to focus your attention on what the summary question is asking you to write about. Because you could write a summary about everything that's in the piece or about something other than what you're being asked to write about. So if this was on a past paper and you had your highlighter out, you would likely, or you should, highlight structure of Uluru and the word dream time. And you can see in this, in this second slide, or this next slide, that I have highlighted the keywords. I've also bolded some instruction words that you need to keep in mind, okay? When you write a summary, it has to be continuous writing. That means sentence paragraph form. What you are not to write is a bullet point list, or even writing that sounds like a list, okay? And also, I've bolded the phrase, use your own words. Now, it does say as far as possible. Sometimes there's just a word or a phrase you either don't know another word or phrase from, or it'd be just really wordy if you went out of your way to avoid the language of the original. And new this year, in 2020, the exams are switching to limit the amount of words. And I have never seen them do this before in the first language exam. So this is really pushing people to be concise, okay? I'll talk to you later on in this video, but I had to work really hard, and I'm an English teacher, to get mine down to 120 words, okay? And of course, there's 10 marks available for the content. That means like relevant information that you collect that's based or focused on these two ideas: structure of Uluru and dream time. And then, of course, there's 5 marks for the quality of your writing. And you'll know from the last several weeks of my marking that I'm looking for concision, I'm looking for clarity, and I'm looking for you writing in your own words, and I'm looking for you to organize those. Those are all things you get the 5 marks in writing for. All right, moving on to reading with highlighters. That's the third step. After you've read for comprehension, and then you've identified the key words in the question, then you go back through with a highlighter or highlighters, depending upon how many things they're asking you for. Some summary tasks will only ask you to focus on one thing, But because we're focusing on two items or two different ideas, notice how I've highlighted one in yellow and the other in that kind of turquoisey blue, okay? So when I go to my text, I'm going to be making sure I'm finding information for both, okay? This next slide that I'm going to show you here is what I highlighted when I went through with my highlighting cursor and I was thinking structure of Uluru. What would I include if I was focusing on summarizing for another reader who hasn't read this text about Uluru? What would I want to collect that's relevant about its structure, and what would I want to collect that's relevant about this concept of dream time? Okay, so I felt that large sandstone rock formation was focused on structure. I thought that largest monolith in the world was because the idea of a monolith is a single rock. And maybe you didn't know what monolith meant, but should have or could have looked it up. Okay, it's a key vocabulary word in this, but it means it's a single large rock. So that's why I thought it fit for monolith. Besides the fact that both times we've got the fact that this thing is big, okay? And then I've got some really detailed measurements, but because the question asked me to focus on structure, and this is height and circumference and depth, really, I thought that it was relevant. So I highlighted all those measurements, even though it might seem a bit detailed, okay? I also highlighted this term Inselberg, which is obviously a geographical term, but the idea that it's what's left over from a mountain range, okay? An isolated piece of what used to be a bigger mountain. And then I also thought structure-wise, this idea of the bit that goes underground, that I was talking about up here, is believed to be hollow. Now, that's a key word. Is it hollow or not? Well, it's believed to be. It's a structure idea. And so I highlighted that. Okay? And then I switched highlighting colors and I started looking for information about dream time. Now, I wanted to keep it, this entire last part is about dream time, but I'm trying to gather key ideas, main points, okay? So dream time seems like it's some kind of belief in an energy source, and that's what dream time is. I highlighted this name that I'm not even going to try to pronounce, okay, but that would be the Aboriginal word for it. Then I highlighted this idea that it's like this idea, what I understand is like early Earth, that before, there was any of the features we have today that we see, okay? Like prehistoric. Anyway, then there's this idea of these giant semi-human beings that resembled plant and animals, that they walked around the land and they carried out tasks, and when they became tired of doing these things, that's when dream time ended. And then I highlighted several ideas about how important it is to their religion and culture. It affects behavior and daily life, okay? With lots of examples, but I don't want to get too detailed, okay? I might be tempted to use some of those. On this next slide, okay, so if you want to look at these any more carefully, pause and have a look, okay? But I'm going to keep moving on. In my next slide, I have added, I compared what I highlighted to the marking scheme, and there was a few things on the marking scheme that I had not collected. And one is that Cambridge believes that part of structure is this idea that's presented that perhaps millions of years ago it was part of the ocean floor, and this idea of a light source emanating from it. Okay, I'll buy it, but to me, I didn't see those as super strong. So if I was sitting in an exam, I wouldn't have been convinced enough of those 2 points to include them in my summary. But I'm looking for 10 to 12-ish, at max 15 pieces of information to put into my summary. And so I was feeling pretty good, like I had collected my 10 to 12 pieces of information and feeling like I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get them all in as it was. So that's just to show you, sorry, there we go, what else was in Cambridge's marking scheme that could have been used. Okay, now this next slide I have gone through. After I've gone through with my highlighter, then I've gone through and you'll see these little parentheses, numbers with parentheses or brackets around them. And I sat with my highlighted information and tried to look for links between pieces of information and tried to think around a logical flow to the information. And quite frankly, I want to show Cambridge that I am not dependent on their organization for my own organization. Okay, I want to show them that I can reorganize things. And so I'm not going out of my way necessarily to make it complicated or illogical by just like showing them I can reorganize it. So be careful there. But you want to show examiners that you can reorganize the order of information so that it flows logically and grammatically. Okay, where you can make links, pull two pieces of information together. Okay, one example in my thinking here is that I thought, oh, this bit that's underground that is believed to be hollow, I'm definitely going to want to link that with this information here that talks about it going underground. I also thought that it being large and it being sandstone, it being a monolith or a single stone, and it possibly being the leftovers of a mountain range could all go together in the beginning. Then I'm thinking, okay, I'll cover some of these dimensions, and then I'll end with the bit that goes under the ground and then talk about that being hollow. And then that is a nice logical link, just as they have here in the original, to then start talking about Dreamtime, because I believe in this hollow part under the ground is where this energy called Dreamtime exists. Now, you'll notice that I've started with the energy source called Dreamtime here, so with my number 4. But then I decided that I would talk about the importance of this idea and then sort of summarize the main parts of the Dreamtime, let's say, story, okay, myth, if you will. So you can see my numbers here that I'm gonna include that it's a dream, that it's called Dreamtime, and it's an energy source, and the name of it. And then I'm gonna talk about how important it is, and then I'm gonna go back up and go through these points, and I'm gonna use the order that's here because this is kind of in a chronological order already. Okay, and then I'm gonna end with the idea of the end of Dreamtime. Okay, and for me that feels pretty logical. And while it uses some of the structure that's here, because I mean the texts that you're given in exams aren't like illogically organized, all right? But it shows them that I can group things together, okay? So after you've highlighted the relevant information, after you've looked for links and numbered your pieces of information. Notice how lots of my pieces of information share the same number. That means that when I'm using my notes or annotations to write, I'm going to put them together. I haven't numbered them 1 through 12 or 15. I haven't counted up how many pieces of information I have exactly, but I've put things that are similar to each other with the same number, okay? And that gives me freedom. So then when I start my first sentence, I've got these 3 pieces of information. I've got this piece of information, this piece of information, and this one that I'm going to try to group together. Maybe I can get it all in one complex sentence. But it gives me freedom with numbering them all the same number. that I can look at them at the same time and figure out the best way to construct my sentence once I start writing. Okay, I don't have time in an exam for a first draft and a second draft. Okay, so using highlighters and then a numbering system is a good way to quickly collect information and to quickly make a plan without doing a whole bunch of extra writing. Okay, now in my next slide, I've listed the pieces of information that I have collected, and then I've got just the word for word right out of the text here in a list. Now I'm not expecting you to make this list in your exams or in your homework, okay? But for the sake of the slides, I wanted you to be able to see what I'm working with and what I'm trying to do as far as put things into my own words, okay? So I've got that Uluru is a large sandstone rock formation. It's the largest monolith in the world, and that it's an Inselberg, and then I've got a definition for that. So to combine those ideas, I have started with the name of the rock, or this structure, Uluru, and then I have in a sort of inserted descriptive phrase, Uluru, a single massive rock structure made from sandstone, is believed to be the biggest monolith on Earth, and geologists think that it is what is left of an ancient mountain range. Now you're going to see in my final that this is a little bit too wordy, and I'm going to have to take some of those words out, but this is me trying to put things into my own words, okay? And then I go on to the measurements. Uluru's circumference is 8 kilometers, and this structure stands over 318 meters high above ground and reaches 2.5 kilometers below ground. This underground section of the structure is believed to be hollow by the Aboriginal Australians who believe, and this is going to go into my dream time information, so I've paused and we'll move to the next slide with the information about dream time. Now I've got it listed here just in the order that it came from the text, and I haven't reordered it, but I've got the right numbers after it, okay? So I've restarted the same sentence that I was working on in the last slide. The underground section of the structure is believed to be hollow by Aboriginal Australians, who also believe that this space is filled with an energy source that they call Tjukurupa. That was my attempt, or dream time. This is a deeply embedded spiritual belief in their religion and culture, influencing everything from daily behavior to ceremonies and artwork. So see how I've gone from 4 to I've tried to include these key ideas that I've numbered all with number 5. Okay, then I'm going to hop back up to 6 and say, in dream time, the early earth was plain and empty until these giants that looked part human and part plant or part animal started moving around the planet doing daily chores and activities. See, I've moved from this idea of the world existing but being featureless, and then this information about these giant, interesting looking characters and what they do. And then lastly, now, and notice how I'm being really careful to rephrase and try to put things into other words, okay? Then lastly, I notice how I didn't list either. There's some really specific examples: camping, making fires, digging for water, performing ceremonies, and I just summed it up by calling them chores and activities. And you're going to see that in my next version, I've even taken some of the words out because I've got too many words. It's believed that when these giants became weary with these tasks, dream time came to an end. Okay, so I've included all my relevant points into one 154 word summary. What's my word limit? 120. So even after I typed up this summary, I had to figure out where I could bring in some more concision. Where was I using more words than I needed to? Okay, so remember, in your writing points, you get points for being concise and you get points for being clear. Now, if I'm too concise, then possibly the information is not clear. Like I haven't explained it well enough. I've been too general. Sometimes if you're too concise, it's not enough information. And then too much information might be really clear, but it's too wordy and it's not concise. And the whole point is to take a longer text and just pick out the key ideas and really factually tell the reader what they need to know about that topic from that text. Okay, so in this copy on this slide, I have highlighted the words that I ended up taking out. Okay, and if you if you stop and count all these, you'll notice that it's about 34 words. A few of these I had to reword or take out, or change the word instead of just, I didn't just take it out. But I kept the idea of the size, but I took out this single because I was keeping the word monolith. And so I figured, well, that's kind of repetitious to say single. I took out rock because I'm saying sandstone, and so that's understood. I don't need to say made from, okay? And this was just too wordy, geologists think, okay? So I could just change it to the biggest monolith on Earth, and what's left of, I guess I didn't take and out, I think it's still in there. And then I took out ancient, okay? I took out this above ground. I thought it was kind of nice stylistically when I was going to say below ground, but this is just not necessary if I'm saying high, okay? And then section of the structure isn't necessary. The underground section is believed is fine. When I say Aboriginal Australians who, I don't need to say also, I can take that out, believe, and I think I changed that this space, I think I just changed it to it is filled, okay? I decided I didn't need to keep artwork. I've got behavior and ceremonies, that's probably enough detail. I took out plain, and the word and should be highlighted here too. I just said the early earth was empty. I figured that was an okay way to say featureless. And then I also worked a little bit on this part human, part plant, part animal to make it a little less wordy. But I thought this was a really interesting kind of, it's pre-humans, since the world was empty, like I'm guessing the idea is without animals, without plants, without humans, that these creatures will look like a mix of those features that would come later on Earth. And instead of saying doing daily chores and activities, I just took out chores and called them activities. And then instead of saying came to an end, I just said, I think I changed it to dream time ended. But let's have a look on my next slide that I got down to exactly 120 words. So here's my final. Uluru, a massive structure of sandstone, is likely the biggest monolith on Earth and is what is left of a mountain range. Uluru's circumference is 8 kilometers and stands over 318 meters high and reaches 2.5 kilometers below ground. The underground section is believed to be hollow by Aboriginal Australians who believe it is filled with an energy source called Dreamtime. Notice I took out the Aboriginal word, it was too much detail, okay? And my reader likely can't pronounce it anyway, so I decided it was just too much extra. As a deeply embedded spiritual belief in their religion and culture, it influences everything from daily behavior to ceremonies. In Dreamtime, the early Earth was empty until giants that looked part human and part plant or animal started moving about the planet doing daily activities. It is believed that when these giants became weary of these tasks, Dreamtime ended. Okay? Notice that every one of my sentences, I've combined ideas and I've used complex sentence structures throughout. If you want to pause the video and take a look at some of those, I haven't used super complicated connectives, but I've used a variety of sentence structures that allows me to put a lot of information into each sentence. Okay, then I'm not repeating myself too much, and I'm being I'm including a lot of information so that I have what would be considered a wide range of information included in a very short amount of space, okay, 120 words. Now, I don't expect you to do 2 drafts in an exam, but certainly if you ended up, finishing a summary and you realize it's got too many words, you certainly have time to go through and just cross out or put a line through phrases or words that are just extra, like I did here. That's why I highlighted them for you. If this was handwritten in an exam, I could simply just put a line through. Okay, put a line through. Unless I'm doing really great on time, but likely not. That wouldn't be a really good use of my exam time. It would be better to simply strike out the words that I considered to be extra. Okay? All right, for the last part of this video, I just want to remind you of what the descriptors in the marking scheme say, okay? Remember, for reading, you get 10 points. Level 5 is the highest level, and level 4 is the second highest. If you can reach level 5, you're awarded 9 to 10 points. If you reach level 4, you're awarded in the 7 to 8 range, okay? In order for your response to be considered effective, it needs to do the job of a summary well. Okay, a summary is relating a good amount of the important key information from the text to a second-hand reader. Okay, remember, the reader of a summary hasn't read the original. Okay, it also, so effective response means it gives key information, and it gives a bunch of facts that are relevant to what's being asked of the summary. And it also, thorough understanding or competent understanding of the task also would this would describe like your comprehension. Okay, so if your summary shows a degree of misunderstanding, like poor comprehension of one of the facts that you've included, then that's going to affect this understanding part of your mark. Okay. Secondly, you'll see demonstrates an understanding of a good range of relevant ideas and is mostly focused, where the high range is wide range of relevant ideas and is consistently well focused. Focused has to do with the information, what you're talking about is focused on the topic that the summary is meant to be about. And wide range versus good range is just the amount of relevant information you've been able to include. Okay, now maybe in 120 words you can write about 8 facts from a summary, and another student can fit in 12 pieces of relevant information. That student, the second student's more likely to get wide range, and the first student will probably qualify for a good range. Okay, any less than 8 pieces of information is probably going to be down in level 3, which is, a partially effective response, that's sometimes not focused, okay? And lastly, points are skillfully selected to demonstrate overview, and in level 4 there is some evidence of overview. Like, overview gives the idea that you have looked through the entire piece and you've collected a good range of facts, that they're not all just focused from one section or on one aspect, but rather your summary has shown that you yourself have a really good understanding of the topic from reading it, and you've been able to pass that on to your reader. Okay? Now again, these are the top 2 levels, but they give you an idea of what you're aiming for. You want to demonstrate understanding. You want to demonstrate that you can collect a good range of ideas, that you can stay focused on what you've been asked to talk about, and that you can give a sense of overview for the topic you've been asked to write about. Okay, lastly, for the writing points, as I've been saying the whole time during this lesson, clear and concise, okay? Fluently means that your writing style flows well, okay? That you can use the complex sentence structures and the connectives, and your reader has no problem following your thoughts, that you have clearly and smoothly communicated them through a writing style that's informative and formal and factual. Okay? This well-organized idea we've already covered too, that the organization needs to have some kind of logical flow to it. There needs to be, information that belongs together should be grouped together in this, in sentences within the same sentence, or sentences near each other. Okay, there should be really good evidence of you writing in your own words, and also good evidence of you choosing good alternative vocabulary, so that your meaning is clear. Okay, putting things into your own words or other words is effective when you can choose words that communicate a similar idea well. If you change into different words and the meaning is somewhat confused because of the other word attempt, sometimes you can't. Students don't quite make this qualifier here, this descriptor, because some of the meaning is lost by a poorly chosen word for the alternative. Okay, so make sure when you rephrase something that the meaning is still clear. Okay, and then lastly, of course, part of the writing points are spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Now you see, even here at the top level, this is mostly accurate. It doesn't have to be perfect to get top level, but the pieces that are going to get level 3 aren't going to be full of spelling errors and sentences that aren't separated, or that are grammatically sloppy. Okay, this is still an important part. All right, and I want you to keep these descriptors for the reading and writing in mind as you approach the exam task that I'm going to set you this week for your work. Okay, so this week's work is to follow all the steps that were in this slide presentation. That you will, first of all, go back to the beginning and refresh your memory. First of all, read the text. Second of all, read the question and highlight the keywords. Thirdly, read the text again with highlighters to gather the information needed. Then you're going to look to organize, okay? You're going to look for links, and you're going to think about logical flow of information, logical order for the information you've decided is relevant. Right? Then you're going to start writing your summary by following your number system and rephrasing and constructing complex sentences as you go, okay? Rephrasing is the putting it into your own words. Complex sentence structures is thinking about how you can take a couple pieces of information and weave them together using connectives and different complex sentence structure tricks to weave them together into complex sentences. Okay, and then by the end, you will have something like this that is no more than 120 words. If you end up with something that's longer than 120 words, then you can go through, if you've typed it up, obviously you can give it an edit and just take them out. If you've handwritten it, just put a single line through, don't scribble or anything, just strike it through with a single line. If you need to change the word, then neatly write the correction over the top or with a little insert, okay? My slides are slipping around on me. So what I'm saying is practice like you will do in an exam, but take the time now to build the skills. And the skills that you need are rephrasing and using the complex sentence structures, and then giving a critical thought to what you've written and asking yourself if there's extra words that don't need to be in the sentence, okay? And remember, your end goal is to get plenty of relevant information into a clear paragraph that's not more than 120 words, okay? And keep these descriptors in mind when you are writing. And lastly, I have a picture of Uluru, and just to satisfy your curiosity after reading the text about it, what it actually looks like. So you can go to Australia and check it out. All right, I'll be looking forward to reading your summary tasks this week.